Have everybody's attention, please. Well, thank you all for coming today. I know most of you, but I'm Ron Fuller, the current president of the Garland County Historical Society. I got about a year left, so we're proud to have you all here today. How many people here are members? Okay. Any of you that aren't members? They can get you signed up right back here in the back. As Educational Television says, it's a real bargain for the things you get, and you get these wonderful programs like this. So we'd be happy to have you join. Thank you for the volunteers that are here today working and helping with this, as always, and our sound man, Paul here, who none of the stuff that gets out on the net would happen without him, and I believe he has a new assistant that's going to be helping.
Yes, this is Liberty. She's the adult services coordinator, so she can fill in for me if I'm ever absent.
Yay! All right. Well, we're certainly glad to have you. And with that, I would ask Tom to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I have one more little cleanup detail here. My handlers tell me that we need to approve last month's minutes, and I think those were out on the table. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes, please?
Make a motion.
Thank you, sir. And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Liz is going to introduce our guest today, but I'll take a little point of personal privilege here. Novaculite is near and dear to my heart. My father, who was originally a mechanic for the old Hot Springs Street Railway, the bus company, upon his retirement in the early 70s, went to work for Hiram Smith, who you're going to maybe hear a little bit about today, with Smith Whetstones. My father helped Hiram set up the shop there many years ago up off Park Avenue, where they cut the Novaculite with diamond saws, and I got to spend a lot of time around the oil and the dust, and it was not something that Asha probably would like very well today, because it was just giant. It was a room this big or bigger with open saws, oil all over everything, and Novaculite dust being cut by diamond saws. So if you can imagine, probably not the safest thing on your lungs. But Novaculite is near and dear to my heart. So with that, Liz, I'll turn it over to you to introduce our guest.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
I need the microphone. Thank you for being here today. Before I introduce Ellie, I'd like to invite you to next month's program, our May program. It's going to be given by somebody many of you may know or grown up with, Hugh Mills. Now Lieutenant Colonel retired Hugh Mills. He graduated from Hot Springs High School in 1966. He then served 3 tours in Vietnam as a helicopter pilot, earning 3 Silver Stars, 3 Bronze Stars, 1 for ground combat, 3 Purple Hearts, and many, many, many other awards. He had an extraordinary career and wrote quite a wonderful book about it. He's an inspiring speaker, and he'll be speaking to us about his experiences in Vietnam and also about growing up in Hot Springs. Mm-hmm. His father was Hugh Mills, who was superintendent of the schools here. He'll be talking about those things, but the time is a little different next month. Usually we're the 3rd Tuesday, but because of stuff, we're going to be on a Saturday, May 23rd, and it'll be at 11 o'clock instead of noon. There'll be a newspaper article about this about a week before the program, And it'll also be in your newsletter that goes out if you're a member of the society, but it'll be on a Saturday, May 23rd, 11 o'clock here. It'll be a really good program. Okay, now, did you know that this is Hot Springs National Park Week? There was a great event in Arlington Lawn last Saturday, and then tomorrow you can do a couple of neat things. At noon here at the library in this room, there's going to be one of their monthly park chat programs. Now, you've heard of the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1803 that Jefferson sent out to explore the western part of the Louisiana Purchase? Everybody's heard of that, right? Well, he sent Dunbar and Hunter to explore the southern part of the Louisiana Purchase, up through Louisiana and up into Arkansas. Not as many people have heard of Dunbar and Hunter that have heard of Lewis and Clark. They hadn't had the movies and books written about it, but it was a fascinating expedition, and they left a fascinating record of what Hot Springs was like in that very, very early time period. So that's going to be a great program tomorrow. It will be online at the library's YouTube channel if you can't make it in person. Also tomorrow, from 10 to 2, there's going to be another great program, and we have a special guest, Hot Springs National Park Curator Tom Hill and National Park Specialist Mary Hill, who coincidentally is Mrs. Tom Hill. Maybe not coincidentally. Is going to tell us about that event, which is also tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow is Earth Day. Maybe you've heard that before. All the hippies in the room.
The name of that explorer again?
Hunter and Dunbar.
Hunter and Dunbar.
William Dunbar.
Dunbar and Hunter.
Tomorrow at Earth Day, we're going to be out in front of the administration building because all of our interpretation rangers are all going to be at National Park College doing a separate event for the school. So Mary and Tori and I, Tori is our park archaeologist, Mary is our park collection manager. So we're going to be out in front of admin talking about pollinators, how light at night affects bird migration, so to make your house as dark as it could be, and some other things. We're going to have coloring pages. You can make your own little bumblebee out of pipe cleaners and all sorts of cool stuff. So come by 10 to 2 tomorrow on the plaza in front of admin and meet all the resources people there. We have a great time. Thank you.
There's also a program on Arlington Lawn this Saturday from 10 to 12. Participate in Earth Day through a local park stewardship program. Not sure exactly what they're going to be doing, but I'm sure it'll be great. If you forget any of that, you can go to their website, and there's a wonderful list on it. And how many of you been to Dryden Pottery? You know, they're celebrating their 80th anniversary in Hot Springs. Wow. And as part of that, on Gallery Walk, May 1st, they're going to have refreshments at their pottery. They're going to have demonstrations and some other cool things going on during Gallery Walk, May 1st. And I think that'd be something that we'd all enjoy going to do, and tell them congratulations. Okay, but today we have a special treat. Now, this fall I got a phone call one day, and a young lady said, well, long story short, she was supposed to go work for the National Park as an intern, but the government shutdown had interrupted that. She'd come to town from Illinois, got here, and boom, couldn't go to work. So she said, would it be okay if I came and worked for y'all for a while? And I said, for free? Yeah, come on down. And she was wonderful. She's a wonderful historian, archivist, delightful human being, and we loved having her at our place. But then, unfortunately, the government shutdown ended, and we lost her to the National Park, but we have her back here again today. She is a museum program fellow with American Conservation Experience, working at the National Park. Her degree is from Southeast Missouri State University. It's Historic Preservation Program. And she's previously worked for the National Museum of American History and has volunteered for local historical societies. Now, the park is going to lose her too fairly soon. She's going to go to Arizona, and get her master's degree in public history. And wherever you end up, they're going to be very lucky to have you, Ellie, and we're delighted that she's here with us today. Ellie.
Alrighty, let's see. Can you hear me all right? Okay. Let me get my script out. Thank you, Liz, for the introduction. Before I start anything off, I'd like to take a quick moment to thank Dan's Whetstone Company for giving me a tour of their facilities and helping me understand a bit more about modern Novaculite production.
Ellie, you may need to just get a little bit closer to that thing.
Yeah, I talk quiet. Without Dan's Whetstone Company, I would not know as much as I have learned about modern Novaculite production. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Mary Beth Trubitt. Without her extensive research into Novaculite and prehistoric quarry sites around Arkansas, this would not have been possible. Her research is incredible, and you should really support the Archaeological Survey if you have the chance. So, without further ado, everything you didn't need to know about Novaculite. Let me take you back to the Paleozoic era, specifically about 2/3 of the way in, 325 million years ago. Most of the world is ocean, and the parts that aren't are just beginning to develop into land environments that we would conceivably recognize. Fully terrestrial life, beings that live on land, are just starting to establish themselves. These are the ancestors to our modern day lizards, crocodiles, and snakes. But you may have noticed this presentation isn't titled The Paleozoic from Adelophthalmidae. There's a lot of long words in this. And to Zaprophyllum. It's everything you didn't need to know about Novaculite. And currently, there's no Novaculite in sight. What is? Well, while our cold-blooded friends are finding their land legs, there are many geological processes happening around the globe. The Earth is faulting and folding, creating mountain ranges like the Appalachians. Similar processes led to the formation of our own Ouachitas. Millions of years of wind and rain batter down on the mountain, eroding softer rocks, which would become soil, and leaving behind harder ones. As it happens, Novaculite is pretty hard. It's one of the rock layers that saw less effects from erosion. It's one of the rock layers that saw less effects from millions of years of erosion. It's a hardness of 7 on the Mohs scale, so your fingernail and even ordinary steel won't be able to scratch it, but other precious stones like topaz, sapphire, and diamond can. Hogbacks of Novaculite have been created because it's so hard. These are long ridges. They're a little bit less linear than what you see up here, and this is in the Adirondacks. Here is what one of our outcrops would actually look like, taken, of course, by Mary Beth Trubitt. The ancestors of the modern-day Quapaw and Caddo peoples would find these exposed Novaculite bands and quarry them. You can see right there that big stone in the center is going to be a hammerstone, so it's what you're going to be hitting the Novaculite with to dislodge flakes and create the shape that you intend. Now, what shapes are we talking about? Tools like projectile points, so arrowheads, dart points, scrapers, drills, and knife blades. The cattle biface pictured here is actually particularly rare. This is not what you would typically find for knife blades, but it is a very nice picture, so that's why I included it. And here are some arrowheads, because I know that's what you guys are all really here for. But what makes Novaculite different from flint and chert? Well, humans are very good at creating disparate categories for things that can sometimes be a little more nuanced. These are all silicates, which are all varieties of quartz, and that can get pretty confusing. A lot of the differences between flint and chert and jasper and chalcedony and Novaculite can be chalked up to field-specific semantics or otherwise an it depends sort of answer. Generally, Novaculite is a term that applies to quartz that is cryptocrystalline, which means that its crystalline structure is only visible under magnification, such as under a microscope. It is also particularly pure compared to other silicates with an average makeup of 99.5% silica. Another thing that makes it notable is it's very homogeneous. That goes along with the purity of it, but it also is more on the molecular level. So we know exactly how it is going to behave when we look at it. And while that may seem like a strange phrasing because I'm anthropomorphizing rocks, but that's all to say, we know exactly what to expect when we look at it. Novaculite can range in color from black to gray to blue to white, and you can even find pieces that are pink or red when iron or manganese are present. Lighter varieties retain a certain translucency when cut especially thin. You'll notice this most if you come and look at my sample whetstones from Dan's after the presentation. You can actually see, but my raw samples that we just have lying around the office are not especially translucent. So we are seeing a resource that is very hard and durable, but also workable with hand tools, that's available on the surface of the earth rather than deep underground, and, if I may be so bold, is very pretty. Aesthetics aren't a primary concern when you're making tools for survival, but it certainly doesn't hurt. It might even be something you want to show off to your friends or your neighbors, or maybe a little bit further. Novaculite from this area has been found as far away as Poverty Point, Louisiana. That's a significant earthwork. We're not exactly sure what it was for, but there is evidence that many rocks were brought from other regions to this site for some reason. It's hard for archaeologists to know for sure exactly how this got here, but at the moment, the most likely explanation is regional trade networks. So this is 200 miles away. You might be like, oh, 200 miles on foot is really hard, but there is also a more regional breakdown. So you might only be walking things 50 miles to get to one trading center, and then another 50 miles to get to the next one. So it's not as incredulous as it seems. The first time Novaculite would appear in Western Chronicles of Arkansas was in the expedition journals of Hunter and Dunbar, the Forgotten Expedition, dispatched by Jefferson to explore our little corner of the Louisiana Purchase. I'm not trying to step on the toes of this week's park chat. That's just how things happened. William Dunbar, our guy on the left there, would liken Novaculite to Turkey oil stones. These are honing stones from Asia Minor and the Levant, the Mediterranean basin, that were prized for their honing abilities. This is basically the gold standard of sharpening implements before Novaculite was discovered, and that began to kind of dominate the market. Later accounts by George William Finshaw, a geologist, are a little bit more enthusiastic than Hunter and Dunbar. He describes Novaculite as beautiful, pearly, and opalescent in nature. I'm sure you can see why I found that a bit more appealing. There's also a mention of sites where Novaculite was mined by Native Americans, with descriptions of massive pits littered with rock fragments. So this is an example of a quarry site. It's from a dig in 1982, conducted by the Archaeological Survey, of course. And then here's a little bit more of what you can typically expect, especially after so many years of leaf falling, forest detritus accumulating, stuff like that. So pits like this were often known as Spanish diggings, based on the popular perception that these were attempts by Hernando de Soto's party to find gold in the New World. This misconception would even make its way into the writings of William H. Holmes, one of the earliest anthropologists for the Smithsonian Institution. To be clear, he did not really believe it, but he felt it was a worthy inclusion for the lore of the area. Tall tales of gold are naturally pretty appealing, especially if you're, going through the Great Depression and you would like to make a quick buck. So a lot of these sites have been looted throughout the years, unfortunately. And so this is my little sermon. Please do not dig up any suspected historic sites. Contact your state archaeologist before you move anything. Context is key for archaeological work. Without it, we lose a lot of that very valuable information that will help us learn more about the people who came before us. The geologic nature of Garland County and its neighbors means that many settlers who came to the area would set up mines for just about any mineral you can think of. Pyrite, silver, graphite, lead, titanium oxide, and of course, Novaculite. Reports on the geologic assets of Arkansas in the mid to late 1800s emphasized the burgeoning Novaculite whetstone industry. A lot of these companies would end up selling their products in Germany, especially because of all of the precise machinery, precision German engineering that's going on over there, which requires very sharp, very fine tools. Two distinct grades would emerge. That's Arkansas and Washita. Washita is coarser and more suited for carpentry. This label is typically applied to black stones. And then Arkansas is finer and used for sharpening medical tools, would typically apply to lighter stones. Now you can already see some flaws in this dichotomy where you might have a black stone that is particularly finely grained, or a white stone that is a little bit coarser, but this would be remedied in years to come. There is also Tripoli or rotten stone, which is used as an abrasive and a filler. So this whole industry may seem pretty niche. I mean, how often do you find yourself thinking, I should sharpen my kitchen knife? And you should, because dull knives cut you harder than sharp knives. But we are talking about a time before artificial alternatives and when prepared food was just beginning to find popularity with the Victorian health craze. In 1885, 500,000 pounds of Washita stone and 30,000 pounds of Arkansas stone were quarried and sold. Washita went for about $8 a pound in today's money, and Arkansas went for even more because of its higher quality. So this is a typical Novaculite mine from the period, from the Geological Survey of Arkansas in 1890. All right, I know that some of you will know the answer to this question. How many of you know the name Hiram Whittington? Well, one of his many pursuits was a Novaculite factory, which manufactured whetstones right here in Garland County. However, the majority of whetstone production in the United States actually took place outside of Arkansas. They would buy the raw materials and then cut them into shape elsewhere. Most notably would be Norton Pipe Manufacturing Company. It says pipe, but they combined companies later, so it's Norton Pipe. I'm sure that someone more schooled in economics could explain why it was more logistically efficient / profitable to take the raw goods elsewhere, but I am a history major. In any case, Norton Pipe pretty solidly dominated the market. It's not too far off to imagine that the whetstones that you can see here, which were sold in the 1897 Sears Roebuck catalog, were produced by Norton Pipe. I know most of you probably have some understanding of the Sears Roebuck catalog if you're into history at all. But for those of you unaware, the Sears Roebuck catalog kind of functioned like Amazon, where you have a bunch of different sellers bringing in different goods to sell in one centralized location. But as the years went on, demand for Novaculite whetstones lessened. A lot of converging factors contributed to this, but the most prominent was the rise in artificial alternatives. Natural stones are basically these things when they were mined, but they are cut to shape. So there's no real big transformation happening when you take it from the ground to the buyer. Artificial stones are, at least in some way, altered by human science and technology. These are often like alloys of some sort, something that you can't just dig out of the ground as is. But these are often a lot easier to produce than spending an inordinate amount of time sawing stones with a diamond saw. These are also quite cheap to buy and produce, which is a pretty deadly combo. Norton Pike would even acknowledge this argument in a 1934 sharpening manual, although they would obviously stand by Novaculite superiority. There was also the 1-2 punch of the Great Depression and World War II. Jobs got axed, cheaper artificial alternatives became even more appealing to companies that were just trying to stay afloat, and then whatever jobs returned near the end of the Depression would either lose the bulk of their workforce to the military or perhaps transition to wartime production of some kind. Suffice it to say, the industry was not in a stellar place by the mid-20th century. Smith's, which is based in Texas these days, and Norton Pike would both branch out into other products to compensate. The perception of artificial alternatives would actually be a boon for one particular company in the area. Malvern Minerals Company would market their Novaculite abrasive as this is made primarily of Tripoli, which is that very soft, friable version of Novaculite called rotten stone quite often. But they would market it as Novaculite, and it would fit in pretty nicely with the post-war construction boom. But in the 60s and 70s, you would have a little bit more economic consciousness when you were consuming different products. So this would put a greater emphasis on natural goods, goods that are made here in America as well, which would actually be good news for the Novaculite industry. In 1975, Dan's Whetstone Company would begin in the founder's home. Eventually, they would move into their own facility and let Dan's wife, Karen, have her kitchen back. They had been drying and readying items for shipping right there on the kitchen table. And to this day, they are producing a wide array of different Novaculite goods. Steve, Dan's son, was kind enough to give me a tour and explain some of the modern uses for Novaculite. Right here, you can see one of their production stations. This is where we'll have some Novaculite that is at least partially cut down, but not fully worked into whetstones, cores, what have you. Some of the uses that Novaculite has today are pretty much the same as they were back in the 1800s. Excuse me. Dental and surgical instrument sharpening, filing and grinding, and sharpening, just plain old knives. So one of their most famous products, which you can see on the top row on the left, is a 3-in-1 whetstone with different grades of Novaculite on the side of that little triangle. But they also sell pocket whetstones, one of which you can see up here, things like that. Pretty much any shape you can think of has a corresponding Novaculite core or file. You can see we've got triangles, circles, squares, longer triangles like pennant-shaped, and trust me, this goes on for like an entire wall, like the size of this wall. But Dan also told me, or Steve also told me, one of the coolest modern uses, which is calibration of X-ray diffraction machines. These are used to non-invasively determine the makeup of certain materials, namely rocks or pharmaceuticals. So things that you would like to take a little piece of, but not literally. This is a very complicated piece of equipment. I could not explain it to you in any simple way if I tried, but I'll try. Basically, it hits a material with an X-ray, and whatever light bounces off gets analyzed, and the computer helps you figure out what that light means in relation to what the material actually is. Novaculite is useful to check that these are working because it's extremely pure, very predictable, and abundant enough that it's not like a waste of resources to have just a normal piece in your machine. So that's where we come back to the homogeneity, the purity, and the molecular structure of Novaculite. course, not all Novaculite is suited for this task. Those boxes are all filled with different pieces of Novaculite, often pretty large, like that big. Coarser Novaculite tends to be used for fire bricks, adhesives, sealants, fillers, things like that, where the grain size doesn't matter quite as much. Only the hardest and finest grained pieces of Novaculite will become whetstones, which are favored by knife aficionados due to the belief that above all artificials, natural stones give blades the best edge. It's a little funny how things cycle around like that, isn't it? But yeah, the black Novaculite is one of their highest grades, the one that they are able to charge the most for. But things cycle around. And in some way, even the napping of Native Americans came back into fashion. Steve himself is a darn fine napper. If you're lucky, you might be able to attend one of his demonstrations with the Arkansas Archaeological Survey. And Dan's Whetstone also sells pieces of Novaculite for various historic sites around the country to use in their own napping demonstrations. It fractures very nicely, so that makes it good for napping demonstrations in particular. It's not too rare that it's going to be expensive to get your hands on either, but those blades and projectile points are pretty darn cool, in my opinion. And that's kind of it. I am not really good at conclusions. I think it's the history major in me. We are taught to be very detailed and nuanced, while conclusions are kind of the exact opposite of that. So, in conclusion, I hope you learned something about Novaculite that you didn't know before today. And in the words of one of my professors, go forth, do good things. If you'd like to chat with me after this presentation or have any interest in a piece of tumbled Novaculite generously provided by Dan's Whetstone Company, feel free to stick around, and thank you all for coming.
Are you going to take any questions?
Yes.
From what I've read about Novaculite, at the turn of the century, 1890, 1900, there were about 10, 12 different quarries here in Garland County. I think that the reason they didn't build a facility here like they had in, what was it called, the North, the big company
Yeah,
that was here. There wasn't any transportation here.
Right.
We didn't have railroads, we didn't have, you got to take it out one time and go cut it somewhere else where the population center was.
And that was my thought process as well, particularly with New Hampshire's proximity to New York and other commercial hubs, like Boston, stuff like that. I think it would, like you say, be more efficient to just do the trip one time.
Yeah, one time and,
Does anyone else have any questions?
So I think you mentioned at the beginning, what makes Novaculite different colors like this purple?
So it's all because of the metamorphic processes that created these different layers in the first place. There's also probably different trace minerals in each different color. So red and pink are the main ones that we have like real consistent evidence for. Iron, manganese, things like that. But a lot of the different coloration is just, I don't know. I'm not a geologist.
Okay. And did you say that Novaculite was also used to make fire bricks?
Yes, Dan's Whetstone Company makes some fire bricks with their Novaculite. Often it's going to be those coarser pieces that they can't really sell in any other way. A lot of the coarser stuff is also like very good for abrasives and stuff. You can get a Novaculite nail file, something like that to take advantage of the different grain sizes.
Okay. And last question, I guess. It's somewhat unusual when you talk about Novaculite Ramble, there's a series of about 4 abandoned Novaculite mines that are in between the residential area and the national park. And they're all in a row right there next to the national park. And I was just curious if you know anything about them. Were they originally indigenous people sites, or were they, I mean, in later years, they're definitely commercially mined Novaculite sites.
Well, the thing about it is it's going to be apparent on the surface. So even if those sites were originally mined by Native Americans, there's really no like substantial reason why people wouldn't go back in and mine. The beds often happen in a like similar layer. So I don't know, you're kind of, I just completely lost my train of thought. These beds all occur in similar layers, so that's probably why they were all next to each other.
Yeah.
And if they were mined beforehand, I do not personally know.
Are you talking about the one that's there at the corner of Ramble and Dell, where everything kind of converges there? You go on down just a little bit, there's a gigantic quarry sitting back there. The home that was built in front of it belonged to Sonny Burnett, who was quite a Hot Springs name. As a young kid from Ramble School, we used to go up there into that quarry. And we found not many complete arrowheads, but we found some shards and stuff up there. So I think that particular quarry probably was worked by Indians at one point in time, but it had really been dug out. And the word that I got from someone one time was that that quarry also, they went in there and dug a lot of dirt and what have you that they used on some of the construction of homes and what have you around. But it was a pretty big place and tall. It was high. It was a big cut into that mountain. But you can still see it today where the old road used to go up the mountain. It's just to the left of that.
Well, I mean, all I know is there's about 4 mines in a row. They're right on the border with the national park, and they're all identified as abandoned Novaculite mines on various maps.
If you go on out the road to the Gorge Road, you're going down through the gorge, take the road back, take the gorge back if you're going back toward Little Rock. There's several, you can still see a little bit of the remains of, I guess, their Forest Service roads today, but those roads go on to a ridge that runs back behind what was Sleepy Valley and what have you there, and there are Novaculite mines back in that area.
Those are all in the national park,
Yeah,
though.
now they are.
So
Now they are.
they are now, yeah.
Do you know anything about it was a Hot Springs tourist attraction, really, and I guess more of a Chamber of Commerce deal than anything else. In the 1890s and the 1900s, there was an area that was on out Sleepy Valley Road, and you can now access it, though it's on private property. It was called Hell's Half Acre. Are you familiar with that?
I've seen the name, I think.
I was just wondering if you knew whether it was Novaculite or chard, as you mentioned, or some other rock. It's a huge outcropping that nothing will grow on, and people used to think it was a scary place.
Yeah, I wouldn't know personally.
You hadn't been there?
No,
Okay.
Ron, I've read a description of exactly what it is geologically, which of course I cannot remember right now. It wasn't Novaculite.
I think it's flint. I think it's flint, but nothing will grow in those areas.
Well, it's interesting because what I've read about Hell's Half Acre is it's scree, and it should not be where it is geologically.
Right. I've got a
Scree
postcard.
is always at the bottom of a slope.
Yeah.
And it's not at the bottom of the slope.
I've got a 1920s postcard over here of it. I'll show you in a minute when we get through here if you want to see it.
All right, any other questions? Okay. Well, if you would like to see any of those samples I brought today, have a piece of tumbled Novaculite, feel free to come chat with me. Otherwise, that is all I have for you guys today.
Thank you so much for coming. Don't